to Kampala and speak to Joseph Ochieno. Joseph, we wanted to ask you specifically to talk to us about the Allied Democratic Forces. This was a group that was started in the 1990s because its founder was not happy with the way Muslims in Uganda were being treated. But it seems to have become something different. It's fully affiliated now with Daesh, isn't it? ISIS, Islamic State.
You're absolutely right. And not only are they now seemingly substantially integrated with other Islamist-related organizations, but they seem to be also holding holding feet in Congo as far as rebellions are concerned, in which case, therefore, in particular in the eastern part of DRC, you could now say that they now have allies who are both Islamist and non-Islamist. And just as the clip, the story you're having shortly before coming on air, on my side, is that talking about the Sudan, with the kind of polity we now see in the sub-region, it's very likely the case that this is an organization that has now transformed itself into not only a very deadly organization, but one which has got infrastructure both inside Uganda, in Congo, and possibly stretching further beyond. That has not really been helped by the manner in which the Ugandan regime itself, an offspring of this kind of terror organizations went the way in the 80s before coming to government. They seem to be handling it in such a manner that is substantially bungled. This organization's head has been in maximum prison in Luzira, in the outskirts of Kampala, for several decades. Some of the conversation is that they themselves have claimed that Ugandan authorities at once upon a time gave them arms and resources. But Anand, one very quick thing though, it's extraordinary this country, Uganda, this is my native country before going around the world, is generally a modest and a moderate country as far as religion is concerned, particularly Islam. In fact, it is more likely, has been traditionally, more likely that Catholics and Protestants might have disagreements, major open disagreements, than Christians and Muslims. So it's something which is generally quite sadly worrying. Finally, I also say that in the last decade or so, there have been cases of Islamic Muslim leaders and Muslim clerics killed in Uganda and around Kampala. And most of those killings have not been resolved. So it's very tempting for most Muslims, very tempting for these organizations, this particular organization, to find root and the basis on which, to unleash the kind of terror that they have actually done.
There were bombings in Kampala late last year, and yet the government not that long ago said ADF was a defeated force. Is it possibly actually getting stronger?
That is absolutely the point, and it's actually extremely worrying for Ugandan citizens and the Ugandan political authorities. They've got a big question, that question of yours, to answer. Consider the fact that actually Ugandan troops had been killed in big numbers in Somalia just the other week. And consider the fact that this is the area where the Ugandan authorities have put a huge amount of resources, including allegedly building roads.
Sure, I think it's quite interesting. Yeah. Okay, great.
In the name of fighting these rebellions. And yet these guys come into Uganda in an area where the army is within hardly 2 kilometers apart, police posts, and they're able to come in, unleash this kind of violence, and then leave back into Congo. What exactly is the truth? It's extremely worrying.
How much are DRC and Uganda working together? How much external assistance does that region in the world need? And I just want to read a couple of things for the benefit of the viewer. 18 months, but from the start of 2020 to June 2021, the United Nations says the ADF killed more than 1,000 civilians and recruited at least 60 child soldiers. Apparently, 10 to 15-year-olds are some of their most effective fighters. A chap who was forcibly recruited by them, he escaped, and he has basically said, I won't read the details, Joseph, they're pretty disgusting. He's basically said, these guys are totally crazy.
I have, just like you rightly suggest, omitted and avoided watching many of these extraordinary videos. And you can talk about this organization. You can talk about Mr. Museveni's own organization and record in Luwero. You can talk about what happened in northern Uganda. You can talk about where all these forces and operations are taking place around the world. Some of these things are extraordinary. Keep on while asking, what is the point? But in terms of your original question, I'm not quite sure whether the issue is about external assistance to these countries, mainly Uganda and Congo, or rather the absence of political will and leadership by Uganda and Congo and the neighboring countries to look for underlying root causes of these conflicts and to deal with these things much more politically. Even if you're dealing with them militarily, the answer is not actually finding suspects, whose hands have been, tied, you've already arrested them, and executing them. And of course, in these days of social media, these things go around. They basically offer recruiting grants for these people. And in many other cases, also political opportunists who may not necessarily be Islamists want to link and associate with these people because they want to push their political agenda. There's need for political leadership in this country, Uganda. There's need for political leadership urgently in Congo. There is actually general need for political leadership in this sub-region very, very urgently. And this is a non-partisan issue. I think unless they deal with it, we will be looking back into some of the things that happen in northern Uganda, in the Wero sub-region, whatever else is happening in the south. Is actually not a good story at all.
Joseph Ochieno, thank you so much, Joseph.